Welcome to English Mirror. Today we discuss feminism, one of the key areas of literary theory. Remember, feminism is not a monolithic stone, it is many things. Let us try to understand the basics of feminism. Feminism Historical Reading. In 1610, a French noblewoman started the first saloon, a gathering for intellectual discussion or exchange of ideas outside of the royal court. Although saloon participation was reserved for members of the upper class, the cultural institution offered the first secular outlet for educated women to engage in such conversation with men. At that time, women's value and role in society was framed as the question of women. The quarrel addressed education, marriage, and social mobility as it related to women, and scholars have referenced it as an example of the earliest feminist thought. Yet it wouldn't be until the Enlightenment and the Age of Reason in the 18th century that social progress began. With those new intellectual currents came the realization that social and cultural institutions are the product of human, not divine efforts. This way of thinking meant that changes within those institutions, such as eliminating class and gender limitations, wouldn't be an affront to God. The Revolutionary War in 1774 and the French Revolution in 1789 also advanced the concept of women's freedom. Both revolutionary themes focused on mankind's equality, although women's equality wasn't highlighted. Nevertheless, by mobilizing more women politically and establishing a consensus of freedom as a human right, those events laid the groundwork for early feminism. Amid that turbulence, in 1792, Mary Wollstonecraft published one of the seminal works of modern feminism. The Vindication of the Rights of Women argued for the equal education of women, allowing them to become whole, independent people. She reasoned that the current education systems restricted women's potential to contribute to the betterment of society as well as the family and home. Her book was one of the first to clearly and forcefully outline a need for change, and early feminists would look to it as an enduring guide. Abolition and temperance movements that shared Protestant undercurrents activated women as well. Angelina and Sarah Grimke became well-known abolitionists who defied social custom by publicly addressing the American anti-slavery society. In response to the fierce criticism of their speech, Sarah Grimke penned Letters on the Equality of the Sexes in 1838. A year before, Oberlin College became the first higher learning institution in the United States to admit women. Around that time, the exclusion of women in many abolitionist organizations prompted Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott to rally together women and some men to denounce gender inequalities and demand women's right to vote. In 1848, they organized the Seneca Falls Convention, where they outlined women's grievances and their desire for suffrage. The press responded disdainfully to the convention. but the event laid the groundwork for the suffrage movement. Other prominent leaders, including Susan B. Anthony, Sojourner Truth, and Lucy Stone, joined the suffrage ranks as well. Suffragists began to make headway in 1860 when New York passed the Married Women's Property Act. The bill legalized property ownership, joint child custody, and wage retention for women. The use of the word feminism to describe the support for women's rights migrated from France to the United States by 1910. But not all suffragists would refer to themselves as such. Many advocated solely for voting rights, not complete equality. 40 years later, in 1920, Congress ratified the 19th Amendment granting women the right to vote. The various feminisms, however, share certain assumptions and concepts that underlie the diverse ways that individual critics explore the factor of sexual difference and privilege in the production, the form and content, the reception, and the critical analysis and evaluation of works of literature. The basic view is that Western civilization is perversively patriarchal, or in a different sense, ruled by the father. That is, it is male centered and controlled, and is organized and conducted in such a way as to subordinate women to men in all cultural domains: familial, religious, political, economic, social, legal, and artistic. It is widely held that while one's sex is determined by anatomy, the prevailing concept of gender, of the traits that are conceived to constitute what is masculine and what is feminine in identity and behavior, are largely, if not entirely, cultural constructs that were generated by the pervasive patriarchal biases of our civilization. The further claim is that this patriarchal or masculinist or androcentric ideology pervades those writings which have been traditionally considered great literature and which until recently have been written mainly by men for men. Now let's look at the waves of feminism. First of all, first wave feminism, roughly speaking 18th century to 1920. Throughout the late 18th, 19th, and early 20th century, first wave feminism was what roiled the European political scene. This was a form of feminism that championed certain specific causes dealing with a woman's right to have a voice in society. These causes included, first of all, women's suffrage. That means the right to vote was granted thanks to Susan B. Anthony and the feminists who followed in her footsteps. The second campaign is right to divorce. Divorce wasn't always legal in the European political scene. First wave feminists actually fought for the right to leave their husbands. And the third one is racism. The first wave of feminists also included a lot of abolitionists and black rights champions as well. One key example was Sojourner Truth. Second wave feminism, roughly speaking 1920 to 1970. Second wave feminism was a movement that began to take note of injustice dealing with wage equality, sexualization, civil rights, and also the way women were treated in the workspace. This is the point on every timeline of the feminist movement that people easily recognize. By the 1960s, famous feminists like Gloria Steinem pointed out how many double standards existed in society and avidly fought against them. Some of the things that second wave feminism started included body positivity. That means fat feminism first appeared in the 1960s despite it being considered a more third wave form of feminism. Second one, civil rights. Many feminists actually took a very strong stance for civil rights as well. Anti-war, anti-racism rhetoric was a very large portion of second wave feminism. Next one is abortion rights. Second wave feminism also helped legalize contraception and destigmatize it. If you used condoms or the pill, this is the feminist wave you have to thank. Sexual freedom. The 60s also saw a call for an end to stigmatizing sex. This is still an ongoing aspect of feminism. The second wave of feminism was often marginalized because it wasn't composed of mostly white middle class to upper class women. The third wave feminism, 1980 to 2000. Third wave feminism started with empowered ladies who wanted to have it all. This was a form of feminism that stopped trying to normalize gender constructs, sexuality, and identity politics. This was a time of radical riot girls, punk rock as a form of feminism, and a time when people began to embrace LGBTQ causes. Some of the issues that third wave feminism tackled or helped tackle included LGBT rights, environmentalism, that means ecofeminism is a thing, and this was about the time when women realized it's up to us to save the earth from turning into love canal. Then thirdly, body positivity. This was also a time when women started getting in touch with their natural selves and embracing a lot of their natural body issues. Body positivity and calling out the entertainment industry for double standards became the norm. Fat positivity, calling out thin privilege en masse, is also a common marker of third wave feminism. Sex positivity, on every timeline of the feminist movement, third wave feminism is credited with being the first group to openly call out the double standards of men being studs and women being sluts. Brain plus beauty. Along with critiquing society's stigma towards women who didn't fit beauty norms, many third wave feminists also emphasize that ladies can have both brains and beauty. At this point on the timeline of the feminist movement, feminism became more than a thought. It became a lifestyle. There were feminist bands like Three Non-Blondes, pro-LGBT sites, women-only forums, and even entire subcultures dealing with feminism. Fourth wave feminism, 2000 to today. This is the end of our timeline of the feminist movement, but it's just the beginning of the fourth wave. Fourth wave feminism is still in its fledgling state. However, it is really easy to point out certain characteristics of it. The movement is overwhelmingly accepting of LGBTQ issues and eschews the idea of keeping things to two genders when discussing equal rights. It's a body positive movement that is also about sex positivity. Trans people are welcome, but misandrists are not. More importantly, fourth wave feminism seems to be mostly an online discourse. As of right now, there seems to be a divide on a number of issues in the fourth wave feminist movement, most commonly abortion. Many fourth wave feminists also eschew the label of feminist for one reason or another. Thank you for watching this video. If you like the video, please share and subscribe.